Hello and welcome to the Bastion of Twilight Raid Guide. My name is Eliana, and in this video I'll show you all you have to know about Halfus Wyrmbreaker, the first boss you'll encounter in this instance. We completed this fight with 2 tanks, 6 healers, and 17 DPS, but similar raid compositions may work just as well. This encounter has a 6-minute enrage timer. As soon as you walk up to Halfus's room, you'll notice several dragonkin around him that you can interact with. The available dragons change from week to week, and you will need them to defeat Halfus, because he doesn't fight alone. As soon as you pull him, a proto-behemoth will come to his aid. Halfus and the Drake's abilities change depending on which dragons you have available. Storm Rider allows Halfus to cast Shadow Nova. Nether Scion gives Halfus a Frenzy. Slate Dragon gives him a long stun. Time Warden allows his proto-dragon to cast Fireballs. The Whelps give the proto-drake a Fire Breath. Always enable all 3 drakes over the course of the encounter to counter these abilities and make them easier to deal with, and deal additional damage to Halfus, no matter which ones you have up. Shadow Nova deals moderate damage and knocks every person in the raid back. Its cast is pretty much instant, but this is where the Storm Rider comes in. Releasing him from his cage will cause him to be mind controlled by Halfus and attack your raid, but it will also make his Shadow Nova interruptible. If you have the Nether Scion, enable it to make Halfus deal less damage and attack slower. Releasing the Time Warden will also cause him to be mind controlled and attack you, but it'll greatly slow down the speed of the Behemoth's Fireballs, which makes them easily avoidable, in turn making your raid take a lot less damage. Lastly, releasing the Whelp Cage will, yep, you guessed it, cause them to be mind controlled and attack your raid, but it will also reduce the damage done to your raid from the boss and the drakes. So what's the plan here? You should release the 2 most menacing dragons straight away, in our case it was the Storm Rider and the Time Warden, and have your tank secure them. We had our main tank both Halfus and the Time Warden, and our off tank took care of the Storm Rider. Ranged DPS then took down the Storm Rider, while melee DPS stayed on Halfus to interrupt Shadow Nova. It's a good idea to set up an interrupt chain if you have a Storm Rider. When the first dragon died, we released our 3rd pick, the Whelp Cage. There's no need to actively kill the whelps, they don't do much damage at all. Keep them in cleave range and they'll die eventually. At 50%, Halfus gains another ability that he'll use every 30 seconds, Furious Roar. At this point you want to be pretty much done with dealing with the adds and just concentrate on Halfus himself. Furious Roar will execute 3 stuns in quick succession. You're able to move a little between each stun, but you're not able to use any abilities. You can and you should move out of fireballs between the stuns. Your tank should have a cooldown up before every Furious Roar, or he is very likely to die during it. After the stuns, Halfus will immediately cast Shadow Nova, which must be interrupted. To do this, mages can blink the last tick of Furious Roar and counterspell, or you can use things such as Hand of Protection and PvP trinkets. Set up a rotation and make sure to only break the 3rd stun. If you do it earlier, you'll just get stunned again and it'll be a waste. It's a good idea to use Bloodlust after the dragons are dead, but before you hit 50%, when all DPS are focusing on Halfus, as that should give you the maximum amount of DPS on him. Until the gear level rises, you'll likely need it. That's all the mechanics to this fight. I'll attach a video of the full encounter so you can see how we handled the various mechanics. As a note, when we defeated this encounter we were not yet aware that we cannot use cooldowns before Furious Roar ticks, so that resulted in multiple tank deaths and some DPS deaths, and ultimately almost cost us the fight here. The enrage timer is somewhat harsh if your raid is still under-geared, but if you execute the encounter correctly, it's definitely doable. Good luck and have fun! As you can see here, we just pulled Halfus and we immediately activated the drakes just so we wouldn't have to deal with the knockback or the fireballs not being able to be dodged. The fireballs and the breath from the behemoth are pretty constant things all throughout the encounter, so you always have to be aware of whether or not there's a fireball at your feet. The actual missile is really slow, so you should have no trouble at all getting out of it. The fire breath is unavoidable, so click the light welts. Hello! Everybody should know that by now. You know the drill. Everybody puts up their little circles on the ground, stand in them. Not the big fiery ones, but all the other blue, green, yellow ones. Those are good ones. Yeah, other than that, our tank is tanking the Time Warden and Halfus over here. And the ranged DPS are focusing down the other Drake. Now, what we could have done is we could have pulled the Drakes together and got some AoE in there, but it is really hard to see the fireballs for the melee if everything's just grouped up in one tiny little spot, so we figured it might be better if we have them apart, just so people don't stand and stuff and die, because it happened a lot. Now once the first Drake is dead, we release the whelps, as you can see. They really don't do very much damage at all, so you can just kind of group them up and AoE them a bit, but you don't even need to kill them, they're just kind of there. It is really useful to release them, so you should do it. I believe it debuffs Halfus too. With every dragon released, he gets a stacking damage debuff, so he takes more damage per drake that's released. I believe the whelps also count into that. So that's another 50% or so extra damage that he takes. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Don't stand and stuff. Don't let your tank die. Very important one. Melee had trouble with the fire stuff. We had some trouble with the interrupts at first, but that's because people weren't used to the fight. It was easy once they were. So no knockback should ever go off, ever. It interrupts spellcast. It greatly disorients everyone. You have to fiddle a lot to get back to where you were, and then there's a high chance you're missing the next one too, so it just kind of spirals downwards, so just try not to let that happen at all. As you can see here, the Time Warden's almost dead, so after the Time Warden dies, we end up bloodlusting and just putting all the damage that we have into Halfus, which pushes him below 50%, which is where things get interesting. He's about to start warring here. We had a mage interrupting the Shadow Nova that follows after the war pretty reliably. When he was dead, we had some trouble. I think we had rogues do it, some other stuff, improvise, but a mage could do it really reliably. Now at this point it's just a burn, because you're probably fairly close to the berserk timer. We were a little bit behind here, but we could have managed. However, we had trouble with the war killing our tank. I think it happened twice, maybe 3 times in this. We battle rest him once, but we just got behind, and some people died to that. So we got behind in DPS and Halfus, so we hit the enraged timer later on, which was a little bit bad, but that can easily be avoided by just putting a cooldown on your tank. He can, you know, shield wall, or you could put a guardian spirit up, or pain suppression, or a paladin could sack him. You know, all of these things. You just have to make sure it's up before the Furious War starts, because you will not be able to do anything while he's warring, other than move a few yards in between every war. Now the war itself doesn't do very much damage, but if you do let a Shadow Nova go off afterwards, it's quite a bit of damage. Everybody will have their spellcast interrupted, all of those bad things, so it's most important to just get the interrupt after the war. This basically just repeats until Halfus dies. Every 30 seconds he'll use the roar. No drakes are up, so you don't have to deal with that. His behemoth still does all the stuff on the ground and the breath. But it's really just a tank and spank at this point. Very easy, you just have to beat the enraged timer. Now as you can see, the berserk time is actually coming up for us here in 7 seconds. Halfus still has a few percent left, so we're dying terribly, because our tank died to the last war. So as you can see, it's not necessarily the cleanest kill, but we learned a lot from it, so that's always useful, and it's the first week of the expansion. I hope you'll do better, and I hope this video helped you do better, and told you what not to do, so I hope you enjoyed it.